We begin tonight at the United Nations 73rd General Assembly, where President Muhammadu Buhari has appealed to the global body to make more efforts at curbing the effect of climate change in the Lake Chad region. President Buhari, who addressed the Assembly today, said that the challenge has had an indirect impact on the security of countries within the region. He also commended the United Nations and other partners for efforts made at helping to restore peace around the world, especially in the Middle East. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports.
Humanitarian challenges and the ongoing stabilization drive in the region.
In his short address to the 73rd UNGA, President Buhari touched on various issues around the world, commending the UN for finally intervening in the Rohingya crisis, which has displaced thousands, being hosted by countries like Bangladesh.
The international community should strengthen its resolve to combat ethnic and religious cleansing anywhere. We support the United Nations efforts in ensuring that the Rohingya refugees are allowed to return to their homes in Myanmar with security, protection and guarantee of citizenship.
The president, once again declaring Nigeria's support for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, said countries can draw inspiration from the leaders of Eritrea and Ethiopia, who recently quashed years of civil crisis between them.
Nigeria confirms the unwavering support for a just two-state resolution negotiated without intimidation and with Israel and Palestine existing side by side in peace and security. The crises in the Middle East have deep roots and have remained unresolved for too long. Yet we should not fall into self-defeating despair and conclude that they are not amenable to solution.
Touching briefly on the issue of corruption, the president said it was important that the international community help countries in repatriating funds back to the countries of origin.
It is in our collective interest to cooperate in tracking illicit financial flows, investigate and prosecute corrupt individuals and entities, and repatriate such funds to their countries of origin.
President Muhammadu Buhari played up Nigeria's participation in UN peacekeeping operations and policies within the UN, but he pointed out that reform within the UN Security Council needed to take place to reflect the interests of more member countries, the need for illegal migration to be treated at the source, and more attention paid to issues of climate change. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
Back here at home, a state high court sitting in Owerri, the Imo State capital, has nullified the impeachment of the Imo State Deputy Governor Eze Madumere by the lawmakers of the Imo State House of Assembly. Delivering a judgment that lasted for 3 hours, the presiding judge, Justice Benjamin Iheka, faulted the Chief Judge of Imo State and the State Attorney General, Mellitus Lemadim, over the impeachment process. According to Justice Iheka, the State Chief Judge, Justice Pascal Nadi, did not comply with Section 188, subsection 5 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, which stipulates that he must set up a 7-man panel of inquiry within 7 days. He noted that, on the contrary, the Chief Judge set up the panel after 9 days, which, according to the Constitution, makes the impeachment process invalid, null, and void. Meanwhile, counsel to the Deputy Governor lauded the court for the judgment and showing itself as the last hope of the masses. While the counsel to the state government declined comments, the Commissioner for Justice in a statement says that the Imo State government and House of Assembly will appeal the case in a higher court. Mr. Madumere was on July the 30th impeached by the State House of Assembly over alleged gross misconduct and negligence of duties. From justice to the economy now. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN, has left the monetary policy rate unchanged at 14%. The Central Bank Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, who was speaking at the end of the two-day meeting of the committee in Abuja, says that the committee also retained the cash reserves ratio at 22.5%. Mr. Emefiele also announced the liquidity ratio remaining at 30% and the asymmetric window is at plus 200 and minus 500 basis points around the MPR.
Members of the Monetary Policy Committee at a meeting to announce the performance of the economy, as well as proffer solutions to the challenges confronting it.
The essence for putting that framework.
First, the central bank governor gives an overview of the international market and how it has affected the domestic economy.
Available data and forecasts of key macroeconomic indicators show a positive outlook for the economy in the third quarter of 2018. The committee expects the sustained implementation of the 2018 budget, improvements in the security situation, and sustained stability in the foreign exchange market will stabilize prices and strengthen economic growth. Growth in the non-oil sector, especially agriculture, manufacturing, services, and light industries, are expected to drive output growth.
The committee notes that the nation's exit from economic recession is under threat, but lists what must be done to reduce its impact on Nigerians.
The committee was concerned that the exit from the recession may be under threat as the economy slowed to 1.95 and 1.50% during the first and the second quarter 2018, respectively. The committee noted that the slowdown emanated from the oil sector with strong linkages to employment and growth in other key sectors of the economy.
And thereafter, he states the decision of the committee, which includes the retention of monetary policy rate at 14%.
The MPC decided by a vote of 7 members to retain the MPR at 14%. However, 3 out of these 7 members voted to raise cash reserve requirement by 150 basis points, and an indication that left to them they would indeed tighten. The other 3 members voted to tighten by raising the MPR by 25 basis points.
In all, the Monetary Policy Committee promises to ensure both fiscal and monetary stability in the economy for sustained growth in the days ahead.
Now, let's get more perspectives on the outcome of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting. And joining me is the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rawani. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining me on the news at 10. You know, it's really hard to tell if really you are surprised or not about the CBN's decision to keep that MPC meeting figures as it were. Were you surprised, though?
No, I wasn't surprised because basically the economy is facing some difficulty. There are vulnerabilities both externally and domestically. So the central bank did a wise thing. That is, they reduced the options from 3 to 2. In any case, made it binary. Either you increased the interest rates to tighten, or you maintain the status quo, which means you tightened a little bit. So that was what they reduced the options to. Why? Why did they do this? That's a big question, right? The question is that the economy faces clear and present danger. And if you look at those slides that are shown up there, the danger of inflation increasing, because it's already started going up to 11.23. The minimum wage is a time bomb, which is going to come up from 18,000. We know where it's going to go. M2 growth is there, but that's mild. The subsidies are a big issue, and election spending, and the fact that GDP is slowing. So those are the domestic things. But the domestic problems are not as potent as the external factors. The external problems are that today and tomorrow the United States Federal Reserve is going to increase interest rates by 25 basis points. The reserves have come down from all the way from $48 billion to $44 billion. The Naira is weaker but stable, and the stock market is wobbling, and the investment flows, we've already had an outflow of investments. So, but the good news is that oil price is at $82, that's a 4-year high, and production is going back up. But this is not going to be enough to forestall the outflows that are going to come if, at the same time, they did not do what they did.
So then what's the impact on the economy?
The impact on the economy is this. GDP growth is going to be 1.7% for the year, as against 3.5 projected by the government and 2.2 projected by the IMF. M2 growth is going to be, that money supply growth is 2.98. It's not going to translate itself into high inflation yet, but by the time you have the minimum wage, the inflation at the end of the year will be at about 13%. There's no question about that. There will be a credit squeeze. People are not lending. What has happened is that loanable funds have become price inelastic. Whether you take the interest rates up or bring them down, they are not lending. The reality is that in that case, you are going to resort to intervention mechanisms, which the central bank is talking about. And lending rates will remain high. And, it talked about 28%, 30% lending rates, which are not sustainable. But more important...
So does that, in effect, means that we're going to be running a stagnant economy?
Absolutely. Stagnant to slowing economy. In fact, debt service as a percentage of revenues of the government is going to be very high. So what you're going to see is that the open market operations, you're going to see rates move higher in the open market operations. So effectively, you will see higher interest rates. Nominally, the monetary policy rate will remain the same, but effectively using those tools, they'll be sending the signals, and that way they'll be able to reduce the amount of hemorrhage in the economy, because the economy is hemorrhaging. All the factors, even though nominally are in green, directionally they're in red. That's what's happening.
So now we're also looking at the, apart from the impact on the economy, we have the elections. This is the election season.
Yeah.
How does this work out when you look at the country going through the elections and what this will mean to the ordinary Nigerian, to those in the middle class, and of course the bourgeoisie?
What is economically rational, right, is never politically right, right? So what you are seeing now, 22 billion naira paid for Nigeria Airways old staff, 20 billion naira paid for, ASU, minimum wage, and all those things are politically expedient, but they are economic time bombs. We are going to pay the price down the road. But, that's the price you pay for democracy. You have to do the right thing at the right time. So what does this mean? What's the impact of this on, there are three categories of Nigerians. One, the working class, which we call here struggling and smiling. The four parameters for this working class: domestic food prices are higher, unemployment is higher, house rents are going to be higher, and medical bills are going to be higher. For the middle class, these guys are down and out, everything is flat, but the most important thing is that their medical bills are going to increase. For the affluent who have the money, all the parameters are also red. So it comes back to, if you look at the food basket, which affects every Nigerian, there are 7 items here. Of the 7 items, 2, the prices came down, palm oil and yam, because of the season. But all the other items, tomatoes, gari, rice, flour, and beans, all went up by a range of 20% to 58%. These items come from the middle belt, which is affected by the herdsmen and the crisis, and that is where the problem is.
It's a major concern for us in the country.
In the end, you're between a rock and a hard place. You've got to take the least of all evils. It was a wise decision, bold decision, and it's going to be better off. Now the outlook is that the MTN saga will be amicably resolved. This was not in the communique, but it came on a question and answer. That has hurt the stock market, hurt our flows. If you can stop that, then it will help, because that was an unforced error.
That's a good place to let it rest. I must thank you so much indeed, the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, for sharing your thoughts with us on the MPR of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.